Hey guys, I'm Sage Valentine, and I'm back here to review another episode of AMC's Fear the Walking Dead, Season 4. This review slash recap video is all about episode 5 entitled Laura. I like this episode. It was supposed to be a bit of a filler episode, an episode to give us more of a background on John Dorie and learn a little bit more about Naomi. But it did not bore me. It did not put me to sleep. I made sure to watch it twice because I was half tweeting, half watching, which is what I normally do when I watch Fear the Walking Dead. Not because it's boring, but simply because I got to do some stuff and watch it, and then I know I'm going to do the review. So I watch it again. But all in all, I believe that this episode would have been boring if it wasn't about John Dorie because he's such an amazing character. I like how the episode opened up and he was cleaning his guns, the two, I believe they're called Colts, and they seem to have a sentimental value to him, and I like how he was meticulously cleaning them and how he chose to use an axe to kill a walker that meandered on his land from the water instead of using the guns. So right then and there I knew there was something wrong. Something happened with those guns and he doesn't want to use them. And I like how the opening credits had the sunrise, because as I've been saying in all of these reviews, I like how the credits reflect the different time of day and the weather. It reminds me so much of Netflix's Longmire, because Longmire used to do that a lot. Whenever the story would pop up and it would take place at night, then it would be darkness and you'd see Longmire flash, or in the morning and you'd see the sunlight. I really like that. John seems so lonely. I thought it was very cute that he connected his little alarm clock to Big Mouth. I believe his name is Big Mouth Billy Bass, the singing bass. I think Daryl and Beth came across one of those. I believe it was in season 5, because they were off by themselves and they came across a country club and they saw the bass or something like that. Either that or it was at the funeral home, one of the two, but I remember seeing that before. But back to this review. John's days are pretty glum. He plays Scrabble all by himself. He cooks himself breakfast. He makes coffee. He fixes his bed. He starts thinking of a word that uses all of the letters that he had on his little Scrabble wooden thingy, and he puts a little butterscotch candy in his coffee. And then he eats on the front porch, and he puts water in what looks like an above ground well or septic tank or something like that. And he picks berries and mushroom and edible cacti and chews on some edible plants. That little thing he was chewing on looked like parsley, but I could be wrong. And then as he does this, he thinks of a word: platypus. We see him watching TV, he eats popcorn, and then he's trying to sleep and he cannot sleep, and all of a sudden he hears some splashing outside and he thinks it's a walker, and as he goes out he sees that there's someone laying on the car, and he realizes it's a woman, and he brings her in, and we see that she was cut, and he tells her he's going to take care of her, and he gives her his bed and he sleeps on the couch. Again, John Dorie is a cinnamon roll. Naomi, as we know her, or as he calls her, Laura, she woke up immediately and just went straight for John Dorie's car. The thing is, she can't find the keys. So he tells her that the keys are in the visor, and he somehow, some way, is able to convince Naomi to stay. Why am I saying somehow, some way? Because if she didn't want to stay, she could have taken that car and driven away. So essentially she knew what he was talking about, that she did need to heal up a bit before she could leave and go out and do what she had to do. And at first she's trying to stitch herself up. She realizes that she can't, and then all of a sudden John has to do it. John feeds her fish stew. It seems like he's trying to impress her, this woman that he just met. But he's not doing it in a way of being pushy. He's just trying to be hospitable to this random woman that he's just meeting. He decides to call her Laura because she never tells him her name, but he tells her his name, John. He reveals that he worked at a place called Humble Gulch, where it was like a rodeo type family place. John comes across as sweet and thoughtful, and he reveals that he is a bit of an insomniac. He figured out that Laura was a nurse because she tried to fix herself by trying to stitch herself. And although she couldn't do it, the fact that she was even able to start doing it was enough. John reveals he was a police officer. He doesn't use his guns to kill the walkers because he believes that guns cause more problems than they solve. And he was right. John and Laura head out in a boat on their way to a store that he likes to go to. John tells Laura that he was at one time a police officer, and now he believes that guns cause more problems than they solve. And he essentially was right. Not only in this episode, but in the episode that follows. And yes, I did do the review for that. It should be up here right after this one was posted. So as John and Laura are like riding near this overpass, this like bridge, walkers are falling into the river. And both Laura and John realize that they have to patch up that problem before it gets worse. So they head to a store owned by a man named Bill, who is just gone. And each one of them, Laura and John, or Naomi as we know her, they're gathering supplies, and we see how Laura/Naomi got her bag. And we also see how John got his movies that he watches while he eats popcorn. Laura helps him fix the overpass problem with I think it was these metal pieces. I forgot what they're called. Anyway, they're able to patch it up a little bit. Laura sits down with John to watch a movie, and during the course of the movie, John finally falls asleep. Laura tells him that she lost her child while he was sleeping and his eyes open. And then Laura gets up and she leaves the room, not the house she wasn't running at. Laura asks him to teach her to fish, and then he teaches her how to clean the fish, and then they eat the fish, they play Scrabble, and they bond. It's a really cute scene. John removes, it looked like he was removing the staples, but it might have been the stitches, one of the two, from Laura's wound. And Laura says she's ready to leave, or at least she thinks that she is. So she's ready to leave John's house and go back wherever it was that she came from. John looks so sad. I feel so sorry for him. He's so lonely. John decides that he wants to take a look at the bridge again and fix the problem. And Naomi wants to help, but he said that he can do it himself. So Naomi comes up with this idea to use the Jeep that was near John's favorite general store that they went to previously in another scene. Drive up to the bridge and use the Jeep to block the opening that the walkers somehow, some way were able to open again, even after Laura and John put up the metal thingies. I forgot to mention this, but John Dorie was not happy to find out that Naomi took one of his coats, and he took it back from her. So there's an instance that happens while John and Naomi are in the Jeep. Naomi's standing up, and this walker comes out of nowhere. He's got a knife or a piece of rebarb sticking out of him. And that piece of metal cuts through the Jeep plastic window, and it almost stabs John, and he's moving away, and this walker is determined to get him. Then all of a sudden, John against Naomi's wishes, because Naomi's screaming like, dude, you have to use your gun. Use your gun. He won't do it. He stabs the dog crap out of this walker. Not that I felt sorry for the walker. And then later on, he's cleaning himself up. Naomi's telling him all about how she witnessed people become sick after being exposed to that stuff. And it reminded me, that comment, of what happened to Father Gabriel in The Walking Dead Season 8. And it's pretty funny how Rick and the gang, when they did that same thing of covering themselves up with entrails and blood and gore from the walkers, never seemed to get sick. So John apparently has an issue with guns. He shot his gun and made a mistake. This is his word. This is what he said. John apparently shot a robber and shot him in the leg. And this robber bled out and he died. This is the reason why John ended up moving to the cabin where he is in this episode. Because people thought that he was a hero and he didn't feel that way. And in a way, Naomi could relate, because she said no matter how many times people say that something isn't your fault, you still feel like it is your fault. John feels really guilty. Naomi has guilt on her. They make quite a pair. The problem on the bridge is even worse. The walkers continue falling in the water, but this time it's even more walkers. John is half asleep, or he's actually awake because John's kind of sort of still in his insomniac mode. And Laura is still sleeping. John runs out and he sees that a herd coming up on from the pond, from the river, whatever that is near his house. And that whole scene was scary as all hell. He wakes up Laura. It becomes out of control. And now I understand why John had to leave that cabin. Because it seemed like he had everything he needed, but I guess it became overrun with all those walkers. Laura and John are basically taking down all these walkers, and all of a sudden Laura falls into the trench and these walkers fall on top of her, and at first it seems like she's gonna die till John pulls out both of his Colts and starts firing shots at the walkers, and he essentially takes them all down and manages to save Laura. Laura later on thanks him and tells him that he is her hero and an honorable person. John tries to give her his second gun, and to me it seems like he's giving her his heart. I know it's sappy and romantic and blah blah blah, but it does seem like this is a show of affection, of love. Love in such a short time, but yeah, you know it's a zombie apocalypse, so it is what it is. John is upset later on in the scene, and he won't look at Laura, and then he reveals that he loves her and he doesn't want her to go. I'm like, this is tugging at my heartstrings. He tells her, listen, if you want to be alone, I'll leave. I'm like, this dude is just head over heels in love with this woman whose name he doesn't even know. He had to create a name to talk to her, but still. He said that if Laura, is alive, then the world feels alive, and then they kiss. I assume that they made love. John fell asleep for the first time in a very long time, meaning that he's comfortable and he doesn't feel alone and he feels love, only to wake up the next day all alone. Laura left him and I felt so bad for him, but it was cute how she left him a message saying, I love you too, but something like I had to go or I had to leave. And in season 6, we find out why she had to leave, which makes it even worse. And I'm saying season 6, I'm in episode 6. And John essentially kept those letters with him in some sort of like case. I don't know why it looked like a glasses case or something, but anyway, it kept I love you in that little case. So John and Morgan are talking, and Morgan tells John that waiting equals losing people because John feels like if he didn't tell Laura / Naomi that he loved her, she would have stayed. I'm just like, no, she wouldn't have, because she had something she had to do and she could not stay. She was on the run at this point for something. And at this point, we didn't know what it was that she was running back to or running away from. John believed that they would have a second chance, and the they, I believe he's talking about, is him and Laura. Morgan says, well, maybe you two still do. Because Morgan picked up on the fact that Laura did love him, but Laura had to go, which also connects back to that waiting equals losing people comment that he made. Morgan mentions that Alicia, Strand, and Lucy are still out there, still going after the walkers. And he said, you know, what they're doing is wrong. And at first it seems like John doesn't believe what they're doing is wrong until Morgan says, listen, if you believe that what they're doing is right, then we can split at this point and go our separate ways. For some reason, I felt like John essentially changed how he felt about that situation so that he would not be alone again, and I don't fault him for that. Morgan says, we are alive and a part of the world, and let's not waste another second. In other words, let's go out, find Alicia, Strand, and Lucy and stop them from this mess that they want to start with the vultures. And then Morgan and John leave. John has his gun in his pocket, and I love the music at the end of the episode. The cool thing about this episode, in my opinion, was that, again, this episode made you fall in love with John Dorie, and I do believe that if this episode had been about any other character, it would have been boring on any other show. Except with Fear the Walking Dead and these new showrunners who are from Once Upon a Time, and I'm assuming they have new writers. I don't know. This season, this series feels fresh. It feels new in my opinion. Some people don't agree with me. Personally, I'm cool with it because I'm waiting to see how Salazar, Edwina Finley's character, and Troy are going to pop up and be incorporated into this, because I feel like the writers, are going to snatch us bald, snatch our edges and our wigs when they finally reveal where those three characters I just mentioned were. And I think the first person we're going to see again will more than likely be Salazar. Except Salazar will probably be out of his mind, because remember, he was kind of going crazy in season 3 towards the end. So yeah, I think he'll kind of be out of his mind. And it would be pretty funny if Salazar ended up being the leader of the vultures, or if that leader was Troy, or if Edwina Finley's character somehow pops up with the vultures. Either way, guys, the next episode of Fear the Walking Dead will be airing on June 3rd. So all of next week, I will be calm, cool, and collective, and probably watching some shows on Netflix that I need to catch up on. On top of finishing this book I'm reading, and I'm supposed to be getting Stephen King's book tomorrow, The Outsider, so I'll be watching Netflix and reading this as well. And a lot of my TV shows are pretty much going away for the summer, and some other shows are coming back, but I think I'm going to scale back the TV for a bit until Big Brother pops up. But stay tuned for my next review, which is Fear the Walking Dead Season 4, Episode number 6. I love you guys. Take care. Bye, guys. I love you all. Bye.